focusing on career progression. And as Islanders, we love a bit of inspiration, don't we? So I searched and searched and searched and thought there's absolutely no need to look externally because we've got 5 inspirational, iconic women leaders in this business who will do an amazing job of talking through all things career and career progression and so on. So we've got our panel discussion, and then we've also, if you would like to, got the opportunity to be mentored by any of our 5 wonderful, iconic women. If you would like to be mentored by somebody, you've got some cards on your chairs. Stick your name on it, or your email address, whatever you'd prefer, who you'd like to be mentored by. Leave it on the chair, I'll pick it up and make it happen. And then the other thing that we want to tell you about today is the opportunity to join our Women on the Island, which is a community especially for women that we'll take over the world with and discuss all things career, menopause, opportunities, all of that stuff. But to find out more, come and be part of the community. And our very kind male Islanders as well, we'll be looking for your support in some of the things that we do as well. So, there'll be an opportunity after our panel discussion for you to ask questions. If you want to ask a question, you can stick it on your card and give it to Sasha. Oh, Sasha will be roving about, is that what you say? Roving reporter? She doesn't know, I don't know, something like that. And for those of you who've joined us online, hello, thank you, hope you can hear us all. If you stick your questions in the chat, and then my other fabulous assistant Abby will make sure that those questions get fed through. If we don't have time for them, I promise you we'll take them and we'll come back to you. But what a wonderful opportunity to hear from these women today. We've got Angela, who's our people director. I was going to say property director. Sorry,
you can have it if you like.
We've got Sarah, who's our wholesale director. Francis, who's our property director. We've got Mel, who's the territory leader. And we've got Suzanne, who's our supply chain director. Woo! So, let's move on. So, I wonder if you could start by telling everybody a little bit about yourselves and then how you've reached your place that you are in your career now. So Angela, can we start with you?
Yeah, I think I've had quite a varied career. I think a lot of people in retail expect you've had quite a strong retail career. Started off in retail. I started working for B&Q as a checkout operator a long time ago, and then actually moved industries. Went to pharmaceutical industry, manufacturing. Even had a stint in the public sector for a little while, and then back through e-com into River Island. And if it's just like, how did I get here? I think it's really quite hard to sum that up. I think no matter what role I've had or how I've done it, I think it's been a real mixture of a bit of hard work, great working relationships, and a bit of good luck in there as well, I think.
Thank you. Same question, Sarah?
Yeah. So I actually started as a placement student when I was at uni. So I worked in Miss Selfridge at the time, and then went to uni, started as a placement, and then I kept in touch with HR. As you do, Hasmita, who still works for us.
She does.
And then started off buying and merchandising, mainly men's and women's. And then about 8 years ago, the opportunity came up of wholesale. It was a sideways move for me at the time, but I just knew that I didn't want to just stay in one part of the business. So I thought, yeah, I'm going to do it. And yeah, joined as senior and now director. So yeah, really happy in terms of the progression that I've had through. In terms of what I think got me there, hard work, in all honesty, that work ethic and that drive, the vision in terms of where you want to be, and then similar to Angela, a bit of sort of luck and talking to the right people at the right time along the way.
Thank you. Francis?
Well, I did do retail when I was at school, but actually didn't really know what I wanted to do. I did a geography degree at uni, which was brilliant, but didn't really lead anywhere. And I had a sort of vague interest in property, only really from a residential point of view. I loved beautiful houses. So I, yes, and here I am. So anyway, after uni, I did a graduate training scheme in property and actually ended up in the commercial world. But because I'd done the wrong degree, I had to do quite a lot of exams, which, looking back on it, wasn't the easiest. And perhaps now, if anyone wanted to go into property, obviously not you lot, because you're all happily in your careers here, but definitely doing exams when you're working is not heavenly. But I mean, I did it, and it was definitely worth doing, because there is no question that in my career I wouldn't have got where I got to without that qualification. Anyway, so I carried on at the firm of surveyors for a bit, found it quite hard being a consultant. You know, you did a little bit, but you never knew what your little bit, how that impacted on the business. And I saw an ad for a job at River Island to be a surveyor, and I thought, that's for me. And luckily, Clive thought so too. So a more junior role, and I did that for quite a while. You know, enjoyed it, but became less of a challenge. And then sort of quite unexpectedly, the role of property director came up, and I knew Clive was talking to external people, and realised later in life I had quite a competitive streak. So I thought, actually, you know what, that's my job. And luckily, Clive did agree that that was my job, and here I am.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I started working in retail when I was 16 as a Christmas temp. I know, many years ago. And that was with another fashion brand. I was with those for 21 years. And I decided as a Christmas temp that I knew that I wanted to be in retail. And originally, I was doing my options, I was doing my GCSEs and looking at where do I want to go. And I was actually going to go to uni and study travel and tourism. But then the opportunity came up for me to do an NVQ in retail management. So I stayed with the company that I was in, did my NVQ, never went to university. And since then, I've just loved working in retail, and I've travelled, I've worked in numerous different roles across the Midlands, you know, with the company I was with. And I decided that I wanted to be an area manager. It was challenging. There was many times I was told you'll never make it as an area manager, you know, you need to do this, and through just sheer determination, did international, you know, really got my name out there, and then here I am. So, you know, got made redundant from my previous role 21 years later, and, you know, great opportunity with all the experience that I'd gained through that job to come and join River Island 2 years ago now.
Amazing.
I know.
Hard work.
Absolutely.
I bet you look back and want to meet the person that told you you'd never be an area manager.
Oh, I do. I do.
Yeah, so similar to Mel, I started in retail as a teenager, so weekends and school holidays and various different things, just sort of working in shops. And then moved from there when I was 19, was about to go off to university, and was offered a job on a training programme for Miss Selfridge. So Sarah, I never knew you.
There you go.
So I was at Miss Selfridge, and this was a long time ago, so I'm quite old, back in the early 90s. So I was there for about a year. I started as a buyer's clerk. I was a useless buyer's clerk. I was never going to be a good buyer's clerk. I moved into distribution, into the allocation team, and I realised I was a scientist, not a creative, and I was suddenly like, this is my space. I stayed for about a year, and I moved into a role for British Home Stores for two reasons. Number one, it was in London, and I was in the outskirts at the time, and I was young and wanted to be central. And number two, I got a £4,000 pay rise, which was like life change in my life. I went from £8,000 to £4,000. Never forget that increase. The best one ever, I think, in my whole career, yeah. So I went there, I think that was the mid-90s, and I stayed there until 2000. And in 2000 I came to River Island, but at that point I was a senior merch. So I came to the island thinking, oh, I'll come and stay for a while and see what this is about, have a different kind of... I've been in PLC work for a long time, so never family-owned businesses. I stayed for a year and I left and I went travelling, because I'd never done that. I suddenly realised that sort of in my mid-20s that I'd done all of this work and I'd never seen the world, so I took a year out. And then came back and, similar to me, I travelled the world a lot then with River Island, actually, and did loads of things in B&M with River Island, and stayed in that commercial space, so senior merch, trading manager, merch director, trading director, and then about 3 or 4 years ago now decided I wanted to change, but didn't want to leave, and was really lucky to be offered a sideways move. So I took a sideways move into the operational side of the business, and that's where I am now as supply chain director.
It's a good time that though, wasn't it?
Well, that, I was going to say, when someone says to you at the end of 20 2019, do you want to come and work with fantastic teams? Obviously Rebecca and the gang and Arif in the DC at the time, and a really experienced team. They just need some support on Brexit. And I was like, fine, that was the back end of 2019. 4 months in, we were closing stores, getting people out of Hanger Lane, trying to work out how to work remotely, putting the design team and putting Max in the back of their car. And the rest is history.
Well,
So.
we'll move on to the more challenging. I'm reliably informed from the age of 3 to 8, my career ambition was to be a wrestler. I'll let you make what you will. So you've all had careers that haven't necessarily gone up. You've sort of pinged, haven't you, like squiggly lines.
Yeah.
But if you had to, and this is probably quite a difficult question, if you had to say what your biggest career high has been, because I've got you, Suzanne, I'll start with you. What would you say that is?
When I was promoted to merchandiser and I got a new company car. And we'd never had one in the family. And when that arrived, I just thought, this is it. This is my world has changed. You know. Yeah, I've made it. That was it. And nothing's ever going to, no matter what anyone ever does, I'm sorry to say now for me, ever, it's never going to hit that same high. So,
What
yeah.
about you, Angela?
I think that there's been a lot of things that I've really enjoyed, but one of the things that I'm probably most proud of, and we touched upon it a little bit, was the journey through the pandemic, because the test of your technical skill, your credibility, your ethics, your professionalism, your moral compass, your ability to pull all those things together under really difficult circumstances was something I don't think will ever be repeated. And I think I was part of a team who was actually incredible and worked tirelessly, like night and day, to do the best for our team and the business. So that has to be a real career high, and hopefully one that's never repeated ever again. But yeah, I'll never forget like the moment when I think about 1:30 in the morning when we'd worked night and day to get stuff done, and then someone said something was wrong, and I thought, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it. my nose in, and I'd been in for about 3 months, so that wasn't an option.
Welcome to River Island. And for you, Frances?
Well, I think probably some of my flagship deals have been amazing, particularly Stratford, where we're still in that store, where really upset Philip Green. Such pleasure, because they wanted that store, and again, it was just what you're saying about relationships and stuff, and we got it because I'd had a really good relationship with Westfield. But my lad too, I'm going to sneak an extra one in, because I think the other one that, and I know this is different for different people, but one of the things I'm most proud of is the fact that I've managed to have this job, or these various jobs, and I've got 3 amazing girls who are now kind of grown up, and they're all kind of together-ish, you know, and they're kind of like each other, and they're doing stuff they love. And I think, part of that I do think is working for a business like this, which is not everyone's able to work for a family business, but, if you can keep it together and have an amazing family and an amazing career, I just think I'm so lucky and so blessed to have that.
Sarah, what about you?
Mine's really similar to Frances. So I think I've also got 2 kids. So the fact that I've had 2 sort of breaks in terms of that career and still managed to get to where I knew I could get to. And actually both times that I got promoted to head of and director was within a month of coming back from mat leave. And I like to think that year I took off, they realised that I could do we really need a bit of timing in there as well with the vacancies becoming available. The only thing I will say though, the one into director, despite when I was previous to that, I was only working 4 days. So the role came up and I knew that I wanted it, but it was a 5-day job. So I think just reflecting on that family piece, sometimes, a lot of the time, your family and your kids come first, but there are days when work comes first.
Definitely.
To make it, you can have it all, but sometimes you can't, if that makes sense. Yeah, definitely a priority.
And I now feel really guilty, so I'm sorry, just inform because I have got a daughter as well.
And you didn't mention.
Carry on.
And for you now?
For me, so
again, I've had quite a few highlights from promotions, winning Store of the Year trips throughout, you know, my career. But the biggest highlight for me, and when I start to tell this story, you're going to think, what? That's not a highlight. Was during the closure of Topshop. Obviously, I had to make nearly 500 people that worked across 70 stores that I was overseeing at the time redundant. And at the time, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be such a difficult thing to do. You know, we're having to make these people redundant. But most of all, I'm actually having to ask them to come into their store and close the store down and empty the stock out, pack it all up. And then at the end of the 3 or 4 days after doing that, you've not got a job. But my biggest highlight was I thought, how am I going to approach this? And I just wanted to make sure that everyone felt valued, felt that they'd, you know, had the best experience that they could. And my proudest moment was there was a knock at the door and there was this massive parcel turned up. I was like, what is that? What have I ordered now? It was obviously in lockdown. I was thinking, you know, the Amazon parcels. And I opened it and it was this massive bouquet of flowers. There was the biggest bottle of Prosecco you've ever seen, the biggest box of chocolates, and this card off the whole of my team, just saying thank you. And then I thought, you know what? I've done a good job then. The fact that they've not got a job and they've all chipped together to get me a present just to say thank you for dealing with it in such, you know, like a way that made them all feel important and valued. And not one person didn't turn up to come and close the store down. So I thought that was probably the biggest achievement for me.
You are, Mel.
Oh, thanks, Frances.
You really are.
You read lots of things in the job that I do about, you know, what's the best skill that a leader can have, and what's the thing that makes people feel safe and so on, and empathy, which is exactly what you guys are describing is the best skill I think a leader can have. Anybody can write a strategy, but it takes a lot to be empathetic to the people and show them that you care. You've touched on challenges, and I'm almost like dying to get to this. Like what would you say if you had to pick the biggest challenge of your career so far, the thing that you're most proud that you've navigated? Frances, I'll come to you first.
Oh, COVID. God, COVID. I mean,
you didn't even have to think about that.
I mean, very different to what Angela had to deal with. I mean, it was terrifying. And then we were obviously all out of the office. I hadn't really worked with Will, particularly. I mean, he was around, but hadn't been in the business long. And Will really, right, this is what we need to do. This is what I need you to tell me, and this is how I need you to tell it to me, on Teams, where you can literally see every tweak of your face muscle. and I found that,
Really hard.
oh my God, unbelievable.
So you don't want to go back to that?
No.
Definitely not.
But, I mean, you know, like Angela, I'm actually quite proud of what we did achieve on it, and we, you know, got amazing deals, and the landlords ended up being reasonable.
The
But,
support that came to the business was phenomenal.
yeah, we were.
It was.
Yeah,
Thank
well,
Don't do that again.
and Angela, you touched on COVID for you, but is there a different challenge?
I think, yeah, and if I think about, I probably think of it in a slightly different way. I think confidence has probably been my biggest challenge all the way through my career, and I think that I've seen it in lots of people as well, and I can't say it, but it's mostly women, you see, and then we question ourselves a lot and say, is this the right thing? Am I enough? Am I doing the right thing? Should I say that? And often you can find yourself in a meeting and you are thinking all the things that are coming out of people's mouths. And you're going, well, I thought that as well. But sometimes by not saying it, you can question yourself. And then I think sometimes you think, well, what's the worst that can happen? If you do say it, and actually people aren't looking at you as much as you think they might be. And so actually when you realise that, you can tell yourself that's one of the things I think I've struggled with an awful lot. I think I'm quite confident with the team and the things I'm very familiar with, but in unfamiliar situations sometimes you have to pretend a little bit and put yourself out there. And inside you're thinking, oh my God, don't ask me that question, don't ask me that. And you get asked the question, and usually by your CEO or someone else, where, you know, you want to do and say the right thing, present yourself in the same way. And you just...
I think there's probably a lot of us that can relate to the confidence piece. And I read something very quickly where it said, you know, are you at the end of your sentence saying things like, is that okay? Does that make sense? And I thought, oh my God, I do that all the time.
Yeah, I do.
Why do we do that then? You know,
Yeah,
why
email
are we
like a
sitting in a
man.
meeting saying, is what I'm saying making sense to you? Like, why do we do that? So, like, I noticed that in myself, and I've really challenged myself to not do that, to not be the person in the room that says, do I have permission to be here? Like, obviously I've got permission to be here, I wouldn't have been invited, but I'd get you to think about that. You know, male and female. If you're saying, am I making sense? Is that okay? Who are you asking that to? Believe in yourself, you know, and I think that's something that I'm hoping might come out in our questions when we get to them. And Sarah, for you, your challenges?
Mine's a bit more of a practical, so I've just really struggled with that step of being the allocator, doing the day-to-day, and then all of a sudden inheriting a team and sort of knowing how to manage a team. And I honestly think it's something that you can't really be taught how to do it. There's no sort of there is guidelines, that's not the right thing to say, but there's no sort of textbook, and people are different and people react in different ways. So I definitely struggled with that. And then over time, going from managing a team of 2 to 3 people, now I've got 35. I know other people have got bigger teams, but just that transition piece. The one piece of advice that I kind of took from that is think about who you've had as a leader or as a manager that you've thought, I really want to go beyond for them, and what is it that they're, how are they leading, what skills have they got that is making you feel like that. And also just don't forget that you're a person, and coming back to that empathy piece, and it's okay to care and have that personable relationship with your team, but equally when things need to get done, my team laugh, and I know I've got 2 of them sat here, but they're like, right, Sarah's switched from like to like, this really does need to be done.
But managing a team of people is a challenge, isn't
Yeah.
it? Because you're managing a person, not a project, not a spreadsheet. And interesting one. Thank you. And for you, Mel?
Yeah, mine probably goes back to the point earlier we spoke about when I got told I'd never be an area manager. And the reason for that was because I'd just bought a house. So I was really proud. I'd bought a house, you know, all on my own, and done that, you know, done really well to do that. And then I was looking at, right, what's my next stage in that career path, which I wanted to be that area manager. And I got told, well, you're never going to do it because you've just bought a house, so you're not going to be able to relocate to wherever the job is. I was like, well, you know, surely there's got to be a different career path. And for me, it was about how do I overcome that challenge, and, you know, how am I going to face into that? And I did travel, you know, when I finally became an area manager after doing several different general manager roles, travelling from the Midlands to London every day, covering the Stratford store. And when I finally did become an area manager, my nearest store was 98 miles away. But it was about how do I make that work, and how did I make that work? You know, for me, I'd done international, and at one point my area consisted of the southeast, Jersey, Hong Kong and Australia. And, you know, and it was just like, do you know what, you told me I would never become an area manager, but here I am. But I think that at the time, it was really hard to face into that. I've just bought a house, I really want to progress within my career, and I'm now being told that I can't. And so, yeah, but luckily we had a bit of new leadership, and so, you know, and then there was like, well, there's other opportunities, and I think that's the biggest thing, just look at that career path.
Thank you. And Susanna?
So I was going to say COVID. I think when I was thinking about challenges, absolutely that whole time was just, you know, it was phenomenal in terms of how tough it was, but almost how brilliantly everyone worked together as a team. And I think there's sort of that bittersweet piece around it was such a tough time, and there were such hard challenges. I think one day when Francis was knee deep in negotiations, Warren phoned me and said, "Can you get everyone back in the office safely?" And I was a bit like, "What does that mean?" Can you get everyone back in the? It was a bit like, Francis is a bit busy at the moment with these negotiations. She can't do it.
Yeah.
And you know, we did some things that we needed to do in the pandemic, which then caused. Which was then tough for the team. You know, made loads of changes happen. We outsourced the DC operation. That was one thing. We lost. You know, we had bereavement in the team. We lost Arif. That was devastating for a lot of people in the team. That was a really, I can't hardly say, a really tough time for all of us. But I guess leading through that change and really working out sort of how you rally the team, how you pick yourself up, and then you get everyone else to pick you up. And I think the empathy piece is really important. It's almost, you know, I'm feeling like I need your help today, guys. I can't do this for you. And remembering you're one big sort of one big team, I guess.
Thanks, Suzanne. Controversial one, but I'm just going to ask you because I feel like you're the type of people that will answer it. Do women face different challenges to men in their quest to become a leader?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, some we picked on a bit with the children point. Anyone's got children. You know, I took a year out as well with Mia, and I think that you stop your career for a year, and then you have to get yourself back into your career. And lots of men don't do that. Some do. So I'm being very generalist here. My husband did actually stop his career, but not everyone does. And I think that's the you're immediately on the back foot of maybe a year's worth of your life. You can be if you've decided to have children.
But I think also, you know, society tends to value male traits in leadership, or historically has valued male traits in leadership much more than.
They definitely do.
Yeah, so sort of that, you know, getting there and
Historically,
yeah,
they
it
do.
probably is even
Yeah,
now.
and you've had it really tough.
Well,
You've had all your world.
a lot of
has
men.
been-
A lot of men in property. I was the only. I don't remember. God, it's such a long time ago. But I was the only girl in my graduate intake into the property business, and the only one who hadn't done the right degree. Probably also the only one who was asked if I was going to have a baby. Which
How
was.
do we, so in the room, do we think that's the case? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Jose. So how have you navigated that then, Angela? So you're now people director. You are responsible for everything people in this business.
Absolutely.
You are.
All eyes on Angela. Actually in charge.
If that's how you feel, how have you navigated that then?
I think there's a real difference between sometimes you can come across people with in terms of their attitude towards women. And I've had a few examples, I think we probably all have, of where behaviours over the last X amount of years in your career, you just think, oh, that happened now, that would never, ever not make the paper kind of thing. But I think what you can't do is just say, is make it a battle. It isn't a battle. We have to, I think there's definitely something in understanding where we need to get to, not fundamentally changing who you are, because I think that's really stressful.
Yeah.
You try and be something that you're not, or be so, but there's a difference between that and being flexible. You have to take into the room what's going on, what's actually valuable, what's the best way for me to get to it. And sometimes you need to push yourself out of your normal comfort zone to get to that point. You might need to be more assertive, or you might need to actually be a little less assertive to get to where you are, to get your seat at that table without sacrificing yourself. You know, you can spend a lot of time, I know I've just said this, but you can spend a lot of time thinking about how should I be, how should I behave, but fundamentally do not lose the sight of who you are. You can't be anybody else.
No.
You just can't, no matter how much you try. And people who try that too much have a very, very, very stressful time. It never, ever works out. You always go back to yourself. So build on the great things about yourself, but also recognise there are things about yourself you're going to have to adapt and mould and bend to the situation that you're in. Don't make it a battle. Just 'cause you're in a room with a whole load of men, that's your superpower, because you're the only one.
I think that's so true.
That's what you said.
Yeah, I think without question, I think one of the things that I've definitely found throughout my career is that those sort of female traits, you know, those sort of naturally more feminine things, can't think of the word, you know, like empathy, collaboration, and I actually think the best one is being underestimated. I mean, honestly, I swear, you know, I think if you don't go in and, you know, look, we're all different, and there are occasions when you need to be really aggressive and really on it, and what my girls call my scary mummy. That there's no doubt that you have to read rooms and be like that. But also if you're underestimated, the things that you can achieve as a result of that are incredible. So you just kind of have to believe in yourself a bit, and you know, as Andrew says, don't be who you're not. You know, we all have different skills, but basically being a woman is a amazing superpower.
Yes, yeah.
Definitely.
And I think for myself as well, I'm not part of the panel, but I buy into that. I think, you know, I look at me, I don't have a corporate spoon in my mouth. I'm a Geordie, I have a northern accent, I love a curl, I love false tan, I love a big earring, I love a hoochie. But that sometimes makes people think, oh,
Yeah.
well, who's she?
Yeah.
What does she do?
Yeah.
So sometimes I think that is advantageous, isn't it? That
Yeah.
you think people in the room all think I'm a bit stupid. Token northerner who doesn't really
Yeah.
know what she's doing. So yeah, I think that works. And how have you navigated your world, Suzanne?
Yeah, so I think that a couple of things to the point on the children piece and how that can kind of sort of stem your career. I've been really lucky in that my husband he's taken a back step and helped me. So I'm going to call out brilliant men as well as brilliant
Yeah,
women.
definitely, definitely.
And it doesn't have to be that way, but I think that for me, it enabled me to be almost to act like boys in terms of being able to do what I needed to do at a time when without him there, I wouldn't have been able to. And then totally, you've got to be yourself. I back in Myself, which was a long, long time ago, there used to be an award called Ruby, Respect, Understand and Be Yourself. And I think that never a truer thing has sort of always stuck with me. You cannot fake this. This has got to be what you want to do. It's going to be so hard. You know, there's going to be horrible times. You can't fake it. You either really want to carry on climbing the ladder or you don't, and that's okay also.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
What about you, Mel?
I think for me, obviously, I haven't got children, and I think that's perhaps one thing that's came up perhaps against me in my career. On the flip side, you know, I've had comments you're only successful because you haven't got children, so you can really focus on that. And I think I might not have children, but I've actually got a life. You know, I've got 2 nephews and an amazing niece that if you came into my house or went into my car, I've got car seats, I've got toys, and you'd think that I had got children, but they just spend every weekend pretty much with me. And I think that's the thing that, you know, I'm where I am because I've actually worked hard, not because I haven't got children. And sometimes I've really had to remind myself, because people are like, oh, you're just lucky, you can focus on that, you can do the extra hours. And, you know, I'd rather give 110% during the hours that I am here than 50% and work 24/7. So I think that's the biggest thing for me, is you really need to remember that. And, you know, just because I haven't got children doesn't mean to say I'll pick up all the Christmas shifts, because I still like to celebrate Christmas with my family and friends. I still like to go out. So I think that's probably a bit of a flip side to where you guys have, you know, had those challenges as well with having children and having to navigate that. It's also because you are female, people just expect you to, and they expect you successful if you've not.
Yeah. True.
And your world, Sarah?
I think everyone has sort of a natural skill set. So me, I'm personable, I'm bubbly, I talk to anyone and everyone. Communication, collaboration, so some of those skills that are considered softer skills, but probably do become or come more naturally. But then there are times when I am in a room and I need to lean on more of that assertive part of my personality. And I can be assertive, I know I can. I just have to push myself to be that. Not let them know that that's any different to how I am on a normal basis. If I need to be more confident and I need to you know, have everyone in the room listening to me, talk that little bit louder, make sure that I've engaged with people. So there's your softer skill of engaging them and being personable, and then I'm delivering that message in 9 times out of 10 a calm manner, but in a confident way that then they're so bought in that they know, and then, you know, you can walk out and then it's down to you to deliver it. So I think just read the room, and whatever that skill set is that you need to just lean on a bit more, then that's okay to do that as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And I suppose, you know, people have been driven to listen to you guys today because maybe they've got an interesting career progression. So what would be your best career progression advice? If I had to pin you down and say, like, what would be the one thing you would tell people to do? What would it be? What would it be now? Just because you smile there.
I think it's just believe in yourself. If you have a goal, believe in yourself. And if you're unsure of how to get there, then ask. You know, there's always someone that will support you on how to get to that end goal, whether it's your line manager, whether it's a mentor, whether it's someone else in the business. And I think, you know, I've had to trust in other people's advice and different ways. So I think just make sure you have a goal and you believe in yourself and that you can achieve it. That would be my biggest advice.
And have your goals always been really stretching? Like, have you always had aspirational goals, or are you somebody that sets smaller little goals and then like get to that
I
one and then
think
get to that one?
ultimately, probably the second one. Ultimately, just get to the next one. What's next? What's next? I always want to know what's next. But I think, you know, when I was a operations manager in a flagship years ago, I always knew that actually I did want to be an area manager. So it was, what route was that going to then be to get there? So I think, you know, no matter how big the goal is, you've got to take those little steps to get there anyway. So it's just breaking it down.
Sage advice, thank you. Back to you, Suzanne.
I think self-awareness.
Yeah.
And we've been blessed, and Jess in the room, to do our insights with Samo recently. Sounds what she said behind, and the whole team did that, and I think that's always a great part of the journey. I think that this is, you can do anything you want to do, genuinely. If you decide today, any of you, anything you want. But you need to be really aware of what your capabilities are and what support you're going to need around you. And whether that's support, as I said, for childcare, or whether it's support within the team, or, you know, I'm not great with detail, but a lot of other people are. So, you know, it's that kind of stuff. I think self-awareness is just, you can do anything you want to do. You really can.
Angela?
I think I've got 3 things.
That's not a surprise.
I've got 3 things. I think you need to be accountable for your own development. It's very rare someone comes up to you and gives you something that takes you, really genuinely takes you further. So you have to genuinely be accountable. Look for the ways to get that experience. Look to those places where you can learn, read those books, those articles, and all those things that just broaden your experience. I think working hard, don't expect it, it's not easy. Sometimes you just want to go home, sit in front of the TV and watch something. You don't want to do the next thing, because it's hard work. It's not always easy. You do have to stretch yourself an awful lot. And I think the other thing is you've got to lead yourself. You've got to lead yourself really well before you can lead other people. And I think you can forget that sometimes, that actually you're accountable for how well you deliver yourself, you present yourself, and all those things.
Sage advice. I'm glad you had 3.
Similar to Angela, actually, I've said I believe that opportunities don't just land on your lap. I think you have to be constantly listening, and there's small little things that I look back now that so a choice that you make. So as an example, one year I didn't have kids at this point, but it was further markdown on Boxing Day, and they asked for volunteers, and I thought, God, I really don't want to come in and do it. And it was at the time where we didn't have the jazzy systems of today, and I volunteered, and on reflection I'm like, right, it got me FaceTime one-to-one with the director at that point in time. I learnt a skill set really quickly because it was almost like one-on-one training. It was just that choice that I made to say, yeah, I'm not doing anything, I'll put myself forward. But actually, looking back, that was probably something, just got me noticed slightly. And then I also think, don't underestimate a sideways move. I think you're always striving for more money, more, a bigger role, etc. But sometimes the bigger the role, the wider the skill set needs to be. And sometimes you might nearly be there, but you're not quite there. So by taking that sideways move, it keeps your mind going, it gives you something new to focus on, and it will get you there. But at that point in time, it might feel like, oh, but it's not a bigger title or something. But at points in your career, it isn't necessarily about the title. It's more about what you can get from that move.
Such a good
Yeah.
broadening your horizons is a really good point.
Yeah.
And not getting
Rather
hung
than
up on
just being
titles.
channeled. It might be that you're in a certain function and you want to progress through that, but even within that, there has to be some sideways moves that can give you something different.
Yeah.
And for you, Frances?
I think ask for help would be my. I mean, I don't mean ask for help because you can't be bothered to do your job. I don't mean that, obviously. I don't fancy doing that. Can you help me? No, don't. But I think we all have times and where it is tough, and you can't. Either you can't see the wood for the trees, or genuinely it's an issue or a problem or a situation that you just don't really know how to navigate round. And I think, you shouldn't be afraid to ask for help. I mean, that may be from a peer, it may be from your line manager, it may be from someone more senior, it may be from a mentor, it might be from a friend. You know, I mean, I don't know whether this is a female thing or that this is just me, but I definitely think better if I verbalise my issues or my problems or my conundrums. And I think, you know, there are always people who will help you. And just don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask for it.
Thank you. So I want to spend the rest of the time giving you guys the opportunity to ask any questions that you think we haven't asked. So either online or in the room, let us know if you have any questions.
Go for it. So I read somewhere ages ago, and apologies to the men in the room, this is a very generalist statement, but when it comes to looking at a job application or the next step, men apply for that job if they can only do 50% of it, but women always look at it and say, well, if I can't do all of it, then I'm not qualified for that. So for each of you guys, when you've taken that next step, have you felt that you're already at that stage and doing it, or have you gone there thinking, oh my God, I don't know how? Have you taken that men's approach of I can do half of it, but I can do it, or has it been all or nothing?
Do you want to take that one, Angela?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't. I think that's absolutely right, and I think that every single role or step that I've taken has been a bit of a push to myself to do it. And I think that there's not one single job that I've ever done where I think I've absolutely nailed that. I can do that every day without even thinking about it. I think I'm always thinking, oh, I'm not sure. Okay, next one. But every single time you should look back and think how much you've achieved. And I do think that's one thing that if you just took a chance on yourself, then you never know what you're going to get from it.
Great question. Anyone got any other? No? Anyone?
So I don't think any of you guys mentioned this. If I did look at a Teams message earlier, so I may have said it. But I guess you're all kind of quite senior in your careers now. But when you were younger, was there an element of kind of comparing yourself either to like your friends or your peers? I feel like now in the world of like social media, I feel like comparing yourself to my friend is also a mum and she's more senior than me and actually she's younger than me. So I guess how did you internalise any kind of comparisons you had in terms of where you were at with your career, your personal life when you were younger, and how did you kind of overcome it? It's quite a vague question, but it's basically about like comparing yourselves to others in your career and beyond, really. And like social media and
Take that one, Sarah.
I was going to say, I still compare myself to people. I don't know that you ever lose that, but I think it can be a negative. And sometimes I look at, I mean, if I think of my close circle of friends, I'm the only one that has gone back to work. So at times I think, oh God, I'm so jealous. Like, you're jetting off on holiday or you're not going to get up. But equally, then when you have that conversation with them, they're like, oh, I'm so jealous that you get to go to work 5 days a week. And so I think you never sort of lose that. And even if we're in the workplace, I'm constantly looking at what other people are doing and what they're achieving. But I don't see it as a negative thing. I see it as almost, that's for me part of my drive. And I know I'm not finished in terms of where I'm at now. So I think in terms of where I'd still want to get to without, even with these, you know, lovely ladies on the sofa with me, constantly I'm like, oh, what have they done? And I think just don't underestimate that constant learning to get you forward.
So compare in a positive way.
And your point, the journey's never over.
No.
I don't know if anyone heard Mr. B talking once about, and someone asked him a question around, so, you know, when did you stop learning? I can't remember exactly what the question was, and I think his response was, oh, well, I haven't. And, you know, that was in his 90s. So I think that's the approach. If you're inquisitive and curious and enjoy, you've got to enjoy this. This has got to be what you want to do in terms of a career piece. If it's not, it's wrong. You know, if actually you want to be at home with the kids, go and do that, because that's amazing. Sometimes I feel a bit sad that I didn't do that for 10 years, but I didn't. You know, that was the journey I took. You've got to get that journey correct in your head, I think.
Thank you. Do we want to do one online?
We've got one in the chat. They've said, what skills do you need to dial up to make the shift from a great manager to a great leader?
Do you want to say that now?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, it's that feedback piece, and we've touched on it earlier, and I think I was very lucky. I was invested in on part of my leadership training in my old role, and some of that feedback, you know, it was quite hard to take during the journey, and I was really open and honest when I joined River Island with the guys that I lead, that this has been my leadership journey. And you know, we were looking at the different leadership styles that a leader has, and I had to score myself, and my team scored myself, and I was so unaware of actually how I was making my teams feel at the time. I was very directive, very, you know, really coercive, and actually that's a short-term style that you just use, you know, like when you need to just get the job done, like there and then. And that was probably, I was in an operations role, so I was probably like bang, bang, bang. And I'll never forget sitting back and thinking, oh my God, like I am an awful leader. But actually it was working on that. I went to a different role and I did the same survey, probably 10 months later, and there was literally 2% difference, 2 or 3% difference between every leadership style for how I perceived myself and how my team. So it's actually just being really self-aware, really listening to feedback. And sometimes if you're not getting the best out of people, I always will question myself first before I question them, that should I be asking them to do that in a different way? Am I getting the best out of them? And, you know, and really chatting through that together, because I think sometimes it's just the way that that person likes to be led is different to somebody else. No two people are ever the same.
And I think that shift from managing to leading is moves you away from getting people to do the task, what you need them to do, to getting them to see what they need to do.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the difference, I think.
People will always do more when they feel valued.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you ever experienced, or you still have, an imposter syndrome? And how do you manage that? I read somewhere 89% of people who are at work experiencing imposter syndrome.
Should we put a hand up if we've experienced imposter syndrome?
Everybody.
Yeah.
I think men do as well, actually.
Yeah.
I think it's not just. I think. Sorry. But I remember talking to my brother about it, and he's very successful in his field, and he feels the same. I think if you have any self-awareness, you're going to challenge yourself, which may then lead to that imposter syndrome. But if you're there in the room and working as hard as you can and really focused, you should be there and you can do the job and be really successful. But it's knowing it's there. Sometimes that drives you on, actually.
It does.
Yeah.
You can come in, I think, not all the time. I think something can come in and out, depending on the situation that you're in. You can be in a situation, and even might be something to do with your personal life where you actually don't feel as confident as maybe you used to, or you've stepped up in a role. I think it's almost a natural thing for you to help you move on. And then some days you get to a point to go, I'm all right, I've got this, I can do it, it's okay. And then you can go back again. It's, it can, I think somebody said it, you've got to talk to yourself positively. Just because today you don't feel great about it, or you don't feel you should be in the room, you might not feel like that tomorrow. So just every day is a new day. Give yourself a break.
Someone once told me to keep a note of key achievements, big though, and then every so often just sort of look back, and then that SWOT analysis piece. And if you just keep working on those in the background, again, it's something extra for you to do, but it does just help you realise where you are, and also helps you identify some of the things that you do need to work on to then sort of keep you going.
Nobody's the finished art.
No.
No. We're all working on ourselves behind the scenes.
Yeah.
We might not look like we are. Anything else around imposter syndrome? Because I think that is a big topic, regardless of gender. I think
Even
it's an
CEOs
issue.
get imposter syndrome. I can tell you that for a fact. I can, and I've the privilege of working with a lot of great CEOs, and the really great CEOs have said that sometimes they feel like they don't know where their place is, how they got here. And so recognising, when we just said that in the room, how many people have it, most people put their hand up. that in itself is just reassuring, surely. Because imposter syndrome, you actually think you're the only person who feels like that. And everyone might be looking at you thinking, what are you doing here? I promise you also that people are just not half as interested in you as you think they are. They're checking themselves, I'm going to write. They are. And once you can just teach yourself that and just remind yourself of those things, actually that inner monologue just gets calmer and calmer and calmer, and before you know it, you're in your stride and you can do it. You've got to be nice to yourself.
Yeah.
You really do. It's not soft on yourself, really nice to yourself.
But that support network as well, I think Mel was touching on, and you know, talking. I think we like talking, don't we? Men like talking as well. Women really like talking. So if you can find yourself, whether it's your peers, whether it's your family, whether it's your boss, whether it's you want to get a mentor or a coach, or whatever it is, if you can find people to talk to, and then you'll realise that nearly all the room would have had their hand up. I think it's just be open.
When I was younger, I had an amazing mentor, and I was talking about not fitting in, didn't think I had a seat at the table, all that stuff. And she said to me, tell me one person that you really admire. And I said the person, and she said, somebody else in this business would name you.
Yeah.
And we never forget that, and I've never forgot that. So when I talk about people in this business that I really admire, I mean, there might not be, but I think there might be somebody in the business that says, I really admire Joanne Earl. So whenever I'm having a moment of, I don't know what I'm doing, which is often, then I remind myself, actually, somebody maybe looks at me and thinks, God, she's got all her shit together. Like, she turns up and all of that stuff,
And I think when somebody asks you a question, 9 times out of 10, they don't know the answer, you do. So as long as you can deliver it and you can get back to that piece of 80%, 100%, if you can deliver it and you've got 80%, there might be a bit that you think, oh God, I would need to go away and think about that. But if you can deliver that part of it, or it does help in terms of having that confidence and that self-belief.
Thanks. Great question. Thank you. Any more?
Have any of you experienced a failure which in hindsight has actually contributed to your success?
Did you want to take that?
No. I mean, I'm sure loads of failures.
That's a really good question.
I can tell you I've made a hell of a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
I really can, and I think sometimes in some days I can make more mistakes than really positive things, not major ones.
Not going to bring the company down or anything.
But things that you think, oh, I should have maybe done that differently. But I think that's a really good question. I don't think I can think of one thing where I think, actually, if I hadn't have done that, I can think where I've taken a risk, and it's even if it hasn't paid off, I've been glad that I've taken that risk. But I promise you, no matter who you are, you make mistakes in a day, in your career, in your week, and there are things that you could do better. And I think if you're aware of that, and it's a similar piece to Sarah, just think back, what would I do different next time? Just get that review bit in of yourself. But don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to fail. I tell you, your own strength and your team's strength comes through the failures, not through the really easy things.
Because you can learn from them as well.
Really
can't
can.
you?
Look at COVID. It was absolutely it was one of the toughest things I've ever done. But that experience, forged us in a different way.
It builds your resilience as well, though, I think, and that is such a key skill to have. Like those days where the sales haven't come through, or you've had a meeting and it didn't quite go how you thought it was. You have to just bring yourself out and bring yourself back up. And as a leader, you have to do it for the sake of your team as well. There are times when you can take yourself off and you might have that, 5 seconds of just deep breathing, but you need to be able to lift your team up and give some honest feedback, but equally just think, oh, how would I have managed that slightly differently for next time?
I think learning from it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And, I mean, I've definitely done deals where I've massively over-negotiated. Thinking, I'll just get an extra few £100 off that deal, and then it's all imploded.
But you do need to bounce back.
But you
from
just
it,
do. And even done deals where I've persuaded the board to do stores which probably we shouldn't have done. And they're there in real life, looking at me every day. I'm thinking of one in particular.
Your question, sorry.
So I would like to ask, what inspires you to keep on
doing what you're doing and keep on achieving more? Is there a favorite quote that you have, or what? Whenever you're down, what inspires you to be back to? You know what? Yes, I can do this.
That question.
I've got one right for you. You can either change it, accept it, or leave it. That's my
Right,
quote.
yeah.
That's it. That's, you know, in most situations, there's only 3 options. And in everything, to your point, you know, you've done a property deal, you regret it, you can't change it, just accept it, move on. You know, and as soon as you get your head into that space, change it, accept it, or leave it. It's a wonder. It gets me up every day.
I think that's really,
When and things go wrong a lot in my world. You know, it's a constant. Well, we have constant challenges, let me say. But
My Australian grandfather had a fantastic quote, which was bite off more than you can chew, and then I'm not going to do the Australian accent, and then chew like buggery.
Sometimes that is the case, isn't it?
But I think the people as well, I think for me, I mean, it's, you know, we work for an amazing business, you're doing things that we love, mainly, hopefully, and that kind of gets you up and just doing the best you can.
It's the team for me.
Yeah, definitely.
It's
definitely.
absolutely 100% is the team. I love being part of the team that we've got, and not just my people team, but the wider team, and the lots of amazing people within it.
We've got time for one more.
Probably feels like a bit of a heavy question for the last one, but so I've only worked at River Island, and I've been lucky enough to work basically surrounded by women, inspirational women. So I wanted to come today to really sort of get under the hood of it. I think, Suzanne, you were merch director when I joined. Sarah's been my manager for a number of years, so you know, been really lucky to work in that environment. So I suppose what I want to come was understand, but so the question is, when you have been in a male environment or surrounded by males who possibly use, I guess, either intimidation because you are a woman, or maybe aggression or other tactics to undermine you or ignore you and not listen to you, how do you then deal with that? You've touched on a couple of them, but just to ask it as a direct question. It's quite heavy for us.
How can I answer this one? I might be actually answering this. I want a long time ago. I was at a board meeting, and my CEO took me to one side and said, "Whatever you do, don't sit opposite the chairman, the brand new chairman, because you'll distract him." So I said, okay, that's fine. So I went into that room and I waited till the chairman sat down and I sat right opposite him. And I thought, no one is ever going to tell me to do anything like that. And I think I think most people, most women would have done that. But I have to say, on the other hand, it's quite unusual to I haven't experienced an awful lot of that, which I think is quite fortunate. But I think sometimes you need to really hold your own, and those are those times. Don't ever back down from those experiences if you're in front of them.
I think it's about reading the room as well, having been in lots of very, you know, like often the only woman in a room. And I think, and kind of as we said earlier, I mean, sometimes you do have to be quite aggressive. Although I don't ever like that word, aggressive. I think assertive, you know, and just stand your ground. And sometimes I kind of have this sort of anger and fury that, you know, if somebody's talking to me in a way that you wouldn't expect to be talked to, and that, I don't know whether that's a great skill, but that does drive me on. But, you know, I think it's my slight competitive nature, which is maybe not always good. But also being able to kind of diffuse things and use those sort of, you know, softer skills, like, oh, yes, of course I understand, but have you thought about this, which is clearly the right answer? You know, so I
get the derogatory comments, but I can sometimes find some women just as obnoxious as men. Do you know what I mean? I think it's not.
Sometimes they figure that unconscious bias as well, like, you know, if a man comes up and they say something in a room, like, everyone just takes it as gospel. Whereas I do think sometimes as a woman, you feel like you've got to come prepared with your facts, with your research, knowing your shit, like, and there's nowhere to hide.
Although I was queen of winging it until I met Will. I mean, we were laughing about this yesterday because honestly,
she blew my mind mind with this statement?
Well, because again, working with these amazing people, but with not a lot of really clear structure, we'd just have conversations. So as long as I had a page of numbers and a bit of a plan of a shopping centre, that was kind of all I needed. So any other random conversation, and it was only when I came in, became, over that COVID period when we were, much more focused. I mean, I hate to use the word corporate, but probably a bit more corporate. And I felt like, oh my God, I need to have my shit together for every meeting. And you know what? As long as you know your job and you know your stuff, and yes, have what you need, but know your audience, just wing it. Warren's going to get me in.
The guy that definitely doesn't win.
Sarah, did you want to say anything on that question? I wasn't sure whether you were just smiling at me or
No,
whether
I was
you
just smiling.
As I know. Mel, Suzanne, do you want to add anything to that question?
I think for me, it's just be confident. I've been in a room, a listening group, male and female, and when it came to the male's turn, they were like, so what's your name? And then when it came to mine or any of the females, it was like, you can go now, honey. I'm like, so I'm Mel. So I think it's just having that confidence piece to be able to say, and perhaps correct them, but in a bit of an indirect way in the room.
Or directly.
Or directly, My name is Mel, not honey.
But also, if you don't know something, just it's fine. If you have to go and think about stuff because it's a difficult question or because you genuinely haven't had that bit of information that you need to hand, I think, just be honest. Don't, because if you wing it and you're not good at winging it, people can tell, can't they?
Yeah. There is a balance though, because you do want to impress and you do want to. You can't constantly be like, oh, I'll come back to you, I'll come back to you. So you have to find your own balance as to when you can answer the question and when that moment is to say, can
definitely.
I come back to you? Because equally, you don't want to be seen as not confident because you're not answering the question. And I do think that's important to remember.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So I'm going to draw to a close because, I could stay here all day, but I'm sure you've got things to do and I know you've got things to do. So we're going to offer you the opportunity to have career progression mentoring with any of our panel or any of the women on the island. So if you're interested in that, you can either put your name and the person you'd like to be mentored on a card, leave it, I'll collect it and make that happen, or you can reach out to me or anybody in your teams that you think would like some specific career progression mentoring. And if you'd like to be part of our Women on the Island community, same thing. Leave your name, I'll make it happen, or send me a Teams message. Thank you for coming and supporting us today. Thank you, Gender Irrelevant, right? Thank you for coming. It's one day where we celebrate our women on the island, but we're a team. So regardless of gender, we're all in this stuff together. And can I just say a massive thank you to my panel. First of all, a lot of them didn't want to do this. And we made them sit on the chair and put cameras in front of their face, but you've been absolutely fantastic. So thank you very much for doing it. Have a wonderful rest of International Women's Day. Enjoy it, whether you're celebrating or whether you don't celebrate, enjoy it. And thank you very much.